Good morning, and welcome to our Veterans Day celebration. Before we begin, I want to express a big thank you to all of the residents who are participating today in our Veterans celebration. I also want to personally thank Bob Taylor for making sure that our Veterans Day is such a wonderful day as we honor our vets. Thank you, Bob. So today is a time when we stop to honor all veterans, men and women, present and past. And at Edgewater, we're proud to be home and family to more than 60 veterans. And at this time, I invite you to join me in welcoming them now. Please join me in welcoming our vets.
Good morning once again, and thank you all for being here. There are some seats up here. If any of you in the back need seats, there are plenty to fill in. Now, one of the best ways that we can all honor the veterans is by making sure that these things are turned off. Okay? Please take a minute now to do so. Vic? Excuse me, just a moment. All right. Once again, thank you all for being here today and for honoring our veterans. We're going to start off, and if you will please pray with me. Holy One, we give thanks for the men and women who have served in our armed forces, for their dedication and their sacrifice in safeguarding both our country and its ideals. Watch over them, guide them, and bless them with both peace and healing. And may all of us, be inspired by their courage and their service so as to work as a nation for a more just and peaceful world. And now, let us all say, Amen. Now, since you're all seated and comfortable, let me ask that you stand, right, and join Joyce Bacharach as she leads us in singing our national anthem.
I feel very privileged that I was asked to do this. Please take her to join. Thank you.
Please remain standing. Please remain standing while one of our World War II veterans, Art Polachek,
Hello.
accompanied by Marlon Kiefhoffer, lead us all in a pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You can be seated, please. Okay. The battle, sir, is not for the strong alone. It is to the vigilant, the active, the brave. Patrick Henry spoke those words in urging American colonists to prepare for war against British rule, arguing that they had to be prepared and willing to fight for their freedom. These words remind us that success in battle requires not just courage, but also preparedness and a willingness to act and sacrifice. These are signature characteristics of American veterans: strength, preparedness, vigilance, and courage, certainly on the front lines, but also in a host of vitally important support functions that are the infrastructure of preparedness. Today is a time to honor all veterans, living and dead, from the patriots who fought for independence in the late 18th century to the men and women who served our country, both home and abroad, to this day. Here at Edgewater, we have veterans who faced the horror of war firsthand and lost close friends. We truly honor your service, and we honor all of you who served in other roles, assuring that this country's military was prepared and vigilant for whatever threats our nation might face. Let us take a moment to remember what a veteran is.
Who is a veteran? Who is a veteran? A country and western singer who once served.
We're still practicing.
This is a rehearsal now. Even the audience are fake. Who is a veteran? A country and western singer who once served as a high-speed Morse code intercept operator, monitoring Soviet Army transmissions.
Who is a veteran? Joni Ernst, a 23-year veteran of the National Guard who now advocates on behalf of victims of sexual abuse as a member of the U.S. Senate.
A veteran may be one of the 52,000 service members who were naturalized as U.S. citizens in the past 4 years.
A pro football player who joined the Army after the September 11th attacks and died in Afghanistan, providing cover for his comrades. Pat Tillman.
A former member of the U.S. House of Representatives who, as an Army private, led 40 soldiers out of a Chinese Army encirclement in 1950.
A retired cardiologist who once served as a captain in the Reserve Corps for Public Health Service, Jerry Rosenblatt.
A soldier shot in the rugged terrain of Afghanistan, or a sailor injured by an IED in Iraq, now counted among the 30,000 veterans homeless in the United States.
A Hollywood idol who once served as an Army swimming instructor during the Korean War and later used his GI Bill to pay for acting, Clint Eastwood.
A sergeant in the Marine Corps Women's Reserve who served as a truck driver and a dispatcher in World War II, whom the world later knew as Maud.
A creator of dazzling 3D art who once served as a Navy petty officer responsible for foodstuffs and ammo aboard the amphibious attack transport in the Southeast. This guy here.
And now, as we salute our military services, please sing along and stand as your service song is played.
Send the Mirages is a guide. Words are important, never more so than when they embody something bigger than the words themselves. Semper Fi and Band of Brothers are two examples. Semper Fi, the official motto of the U.S. Marine Corps, symbolizes the unwavering loyalty and commitment that Marines have to their country, their mission, and to their fellow Marines. It's more than a slogan.
Many of you will remember Band of Brothers, a drama series which introduced us to the experiences of a parachute company in World War II. Band of Brothers reflected not simply camaraderie, but also deep, intimate bonds of loyalty. The Korean War offered another story of the sense of loyalty and commitment which characterizes much of the veteran experience.
On December 4th, 1950, 8,000 badly outnumbered Marines shivered in the sub-zero temperatures of the Chosin Reservoir in North Korea. Just as 8 F-4U Corsair aircraft left the deck of an American carrier. Each of the 8 heavily armed but outdated fighters was piloted by a naval aviator rushing to defend their comrades on the ground. Most of the pilots were young, in their early 20s, but all were dedicated, brothers in arms who would risk their lives for the soldiers on the ground, men they didn't even know, but who were Americans at great risk.
On December 4th, 1950, Navy pilots Jesse Brown and Thomas Hudner were on a mission over North Korea.
We were flying direct support for the American troops on the ground.
Jesse's plane got hit. He crash landed on a rocky slope many miles behind enemy lines.
There's no question in the mind of any of us but that he perished in that crash. Then we saw that Jesse had opened his canopy and waved to us, let us know that he was alive, but he stayed in the aircraft.
And his legs were pinned inside the wreckage. It appeared that the instrument panel and other parts of the airplane had trapped his legs, and that's why he was unable to get out. Tom Hudner, who was Jesse Brown's wingman, made a decision to crash land his airplane on a rocky slope behind enemy lines in the snow, 20 below zero, to see what he could do to save Jesse.
I didn't ask permission. It was something I thought had to be done, and I felt that it was worth the risk to do so. I just said, I'm going in.
Jesse Brown had come a long way from his home in Mississippi. When he was growing up, few expected blacks to become anything but farmhands.
But Jesse Brown had a different vision. He was able to see beyond what white people told black people they were. And one day when they were picking cotton, he saw a Navy airplane fly over, a blue aircraft. And he said, someday I'm gonna fly one of those things. They all started laughing, and one of the other people in the field said, yeah, and I'm gonna be the President of the United States.
Brown persisted in his dream and was the first black man to be trained as a Navy pilot in 1948. Integration was new to the military, and old school attitudes remained.
Immediately, there was all sorts of opposition to his going through the program. Instructors would tell him right to his face that he'd never get through.
They had no problem at all using the N-word when instructing him instead of his name.
But people who knew him always liked him. He was a very popular fellow.
Brown was a loyal friend, a good pilot, and a devoted husband to his wife, Daisy. Other pilots began to see beyond his skin color. When Brown crashed in Korea, Thomas Hudner didn't hesitate.
I just made a decision to make a landing close to Jesse's airplane.
The wheels were up. He crash landed fairly close to Jesse's plane.
And I got over to his airplane, and his comment to me when he saw me coming was, "We've got to figure out a way to get out of here. No panic." The aircraft had buckled and had pinned his right knee.
Hudner could not free Jesse by himself, so he radioed for help.
The helicopter landed, and Tom Hudner and the helicopter pilot went over, and they tried a lot of different things to get Jesse out.
He just couldn't do anything.
They would need much heavier equipment to pry him out. Darkness was falling, and worse weather was moving in.
And I told Jesse, we're going back to get some equipment to pull you out of this airplane.
And Jesse's last words to Tom Hudner were,
"If anything happens to me, tell Daisy how much I love her." And of course it did.
3 days of bad weather ensued, making it impossible for rescuers to return. Jesse Brown died in his airplane. When the weather cleared, fellow Navy pilots returned to give him a warrior's goodbye.
Jesse Brown's shipmates dropped napalm on both airplanes and gave him a Viking funeral.
Here's a Valkyrian salute to somebody we all loved.
When Lieutenant Hudner returned home, Fall River proclaimed Thomas Hudner Day and hosted a wonderful celebration. The appreciative citizens presented the young pilot with a check for $1,000, a considerable sum in 1951. Lieutenant Hudner did not cash it. Instead, he endorsed the back and sent it to Daisy Brown, who had returned to school.
On March 18, 1972, the Navy christened a new member of its fleet, USS Jesse Brown. It was the first time that a U.S. naval vessel was named for a black American.
The story of Tom Hudner and Jesse Brown highlights the power of friendship and sacrifice across racial divides, and it reflects the bonds that many of the veterans in this audience experienced with their comrades in military service.
When North Korea invaded on June 25, 1950, the U.S. military was unprepared and undermanned. In 1945, the Army had numbered 8 million soldiers, but in June 1950, they numbered less than 600,000. Most active divisions were understrength and poorly equipped and inadequately trained. Tanks, vehicles, and artillery pieces were outdated or in disrepair, and ammunition stocks were low.
Suddenly, the U.S. had to expand its armed forces, reopen production lines for tanks, aircraft, and ammunition, and reorganize the defense industry, all while maintaining Cold War commitments in Europe. Combat troops were needed for sure, but also critically needed were clerical, administrative, logistical, intelligence, and training resources to assure combat success.
So, what happened? Millions of Americans answered the call, but the early months were marked by confusion, logistical breakdowns, and desperate defensive fighting. Yet the U.S. military adapted, building a powerful force that eventually turned the tide at Incheon and stabilized the front.
Over the next 3 years, the U.S. Armed Forces would add 2 million service members, 60% of whom were volunteers or enlistees, and many were women. The war had begun with little more than 20,000 women on active duty. By the time of the armistice, the number had grown to 120,000.
Women joined the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines, filling thousands of clerical, communications, intelligence, and supply roles, freeing men for combat. They included typists, radio operators, weather analysts, and code clerks.
And about 6,000 of them were nurses, serving directly in the Korean theater itself, at field hospitals, evacuation hospitals, and hospital ships offshore. They treated massive numbers of wounded soldiers and prisoners and helped dramatically reduce the combat mortality rates of previous wars. Anna Mae Hayes, then a young chief nurse, organized frontline triage and later became the first woman U.S. general in U.S. history.
Lieutenant Janita Bonham was an Air Force flight nurse aboard a cargo plane that had been converted into an emergency hospital. On October 18, 1950, the aircraft stalled and slammed into the Sea of Japan. Lieutenant Bonham was submerged in the sinking aircraft, but managed to swim free and grab the rope of the life raft. She stayed in the water, grabbed other survivors, and guided them to the rope. It was not until 17 of them were safe that she allowed herself, with 4 broken bones, to save herself and go to the 2 available rafts. She was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross.
Viola B. McConnell was the only Army nurse on duty in Korea at the start of hostilities. She escorted nearly 700 American evacuees, mostly women and children, from besieged Seoul to Japan aboard a Norwegian freighter which normally has accommodations for only 12 passengers. She assessed priorities for care of the evacuees and later returned to Daejeon to aid in the care and evacuation of the wounded men of the 24th Division. Captain McConnell was awarded the Bronze Star Medal with Oak Leaf Cluster for her outstanding service in Korea.
The crucial contributions of women in the Korean War helped to challenge traditional gender roles and lay the groundwork for greater participation of women in America's armed forces. But today, we celebrate Edgewater's veterans, all of them. A number of you served during the Korean War, and we'll now hear several of your stories.
When the Korean War broke out, the U.S. Marines were woefully understaffed. Still, they turned the tide at Incheon, but they took thousands of casualties. Large-scale recruitment became critical. So then, in December 1951, the Marines called on Judd Bernstein. What happened?
I was drafted from Williamsburg, Brooklyn, basically all Jewish, and we were told to report to Whitehall Street, which was the induction center for New York City. Got a group of 40 guys from the Bronx, all Italian, so we had a platoon of about 80 guys, wise asses from New York City. After graduating from boot camp, everybody was assigned to their duty stations. Basically, everybody in the platoon went to Camp Lejeune in North Carolina. Me, I was special. They assigned me to artillery training in Camp Pendleton, California. Part of my training was to become an artillery forward observer. scout to locate enemy positions and direct artillery fire on those positions.
So after you've done all this training, we understand you had the opportunity at government expense to take a cruise to Hawaii.
The Marine Corps decided to experiment with the battalion landing team. The troops were assigned their living quarters in the holds of the ship, cots 4 and 5 high. It was quite an experience. And don't get seasick aboard a troop transport. I got assigned the mess detail, so we were exempt from a lot of the other horse shit that went around, and we had the privilege of eating first, which was a good deal.
You've said that the Marines helped you grow up. Can you explain what you mean?
It scares me when I look at the pictures. 10 weeks of Marine Corps basic training does for you. I'm looking scared, not knowing what's going on, and the other one shows a person that has a lot of confidence.
Judge Bernstein, for your 2 years on active duty and for being with us here today, thank you.
Thank you.
Dick, you weren't sent to Korea, but your military experience has made you directly involved in the prosecution of the evolving Cold War. So it was in the summer of 1950 when the Korean War broke out. Where were you?
I was in a truck convoy going from Fort Eustis, Virginia to the New York port of embarkation as part of the summer ROTC program for officers, University of Florida. I was studying transportation and public utilities.
You graduated in January 1952 with a degree and with a commission as a second lieutenant in the Army. What was your first assignment?
I was ordered to report to the Hampton Roads port of embarkation in Norfolk, Virginia, assigned in a group called G4. We were scheduling ships basically to take troops and cargo to the European theater.
And then after 10 months at Hampton Roads, you were reassigned to the Northeast Air Command in Newfoundland. And as I understand it, this command had been established to operate and defend U.S. bases in the Arctic. And where were some of those bases?
Basically, small radar sites all along the coasts of Newfoundland, Labrador, Baffin Island, Greenland, Iceland, even the Azores. In Thule, Greenland, we had about a 4-week interval in August when shipping could get in and out before it was frozen over.
And so it was vital to schedule as many ships in and out as possible in as short a time as possible.
Amen.
You were supporting the construction of the DEW line. And what was the DEW line?
The DEW line was a series of radar sites to detect enemy aircraft.
And that required you to have a top secret clearance.
Yes, it did.
And did that provide some sort of...
Oh, a letter from home, yes.
What happened?
They said the FBI was going through the neighborhood and asking a lot of questions about my patriotism. Kind of calmed my mother down by letter. On one occasion, on a shipment of cargo on a C-54 from Newfoundland, I was the only passenger. We encountered extremely bad weather. The pilot all of a sudden called me up front and said, "Get in the cockpit there quick." He had me handling the flaps, and we did land successfully. He was actually, and I was both, given the Air Medal.
Dick Malone, thank you for being with us today, and thank you for your service.
You're welcome.
in September 1951, at the age of 20, Chick Bamberger walked into a storefront recruiting office in Brooklyn, and he asked, "When are you going to take me?" The recruiter replied, 6 months. Chick said, "Take me now." And the Army did, and sent him to Camp Chaffee, Arkansas, for basic training. And then, liking what they saw at Chaffee, the Army sent Chick on to Fort Benning for officer candidate training. Then 4 months later, Lieutenant Bamberger reported for artillery training and became qualified as a forward observer. Now, forward observers are often known as the eyes of the artillery. And why is that? Because these guys often are positioned far forward of their own lines, so that they're close enough to the enemy to really see their movements and locations, and then to provide highly accurate information back to the artillery positions behind the lines. Now, Chick arrived in Korea in the fall of 1952, and by then, the war had become somewhat of a stalemate, but no less bloody. After dramatic advances and retreats by both sides in 1950 and 1951, both armies were now dug into fortified positions, reminiscent of the trench warfare of World War I. Small unit raids, trench battles, and artillery duels proved very costly. In 1952, Korea was called an artillery war, where forward observers like Chick were critical and also vulnerable. In Korea, 2 to 3 man forward observation teams had notoriously high casualty rates. And for 9 months, Chick Bamberger would edge forward daily through snow, mud, freezing rain, close enough to see the enemy, and on occasion, closer than any one of us would ever want to be. 1953 saw some of the bloodiest battles of the war, like Pork Chop Hill and Jane Russell Hill. You know, 2 mounds fairly close together. And Chick was there, but he won't talk about it. Even though he doesn't talk about it, Chick Bamberger knows exactly what it means when we talk about service, courage, and sacrifice on the battlefield. And finally, after a long year of negotiations, an armistice was signed on July 27th, 1953. And Chick Bamberger was on the first boat home. Here at Edgewater, we have a lot of veterans who answered the call and served. And we thank all of you, all of you. But we'd like to add a little special appreciation for those who, like Chick, experienced the front lines, and for whom the memories remain personal, private, and sometimes painful. And at this moment, I'd like to ask Dick, Judd, and Chick to stand up. And I'd like to thank you, all of you, for having been here today to honor our veterans. And I need to take a special moment for a special shout out to Hugo Ritz at the back, putting all these videos and PowerPoint slides together and have them work properly is a challenge. Thank you, Hugo. A special shout out also to the decorating committee we have, not only for what they've done here, but how they've made the clubhouse and the lobby and this whole place look so patriotic. And of course, thank you to the culinary staff, and you all want to be downstairs for the barbecue luncheon. Now, we're going to close, but I want to do one thing. After next, Steve Manton's going to give us benediction, followed by Joyce, who's going to sing what I hope, with your help, will be a rousing rendition of America the Beautiful. But then after that, we're going to ask that we let the veterans leave first. All right, so those of you in the back rows, please be patient a minute and recognize all of our veterans as they depart first. All right, I'll turn it over now to Steve Manton.
Thank you, Bob. I think Bob Taylor does an amazing job here, and a round of applause, Bob. Thank you. That's not the benediction, right? Compassionate One, we here today pay tribute to all of those who have served our country and express our gratitude for their courage and selflessness, both those among us today and those of generations past. May our gratitude be expressed not only with words today, but through our action. Help us as a nation to remember their service, to learn from their example, and to live out the principles for which they fought. May we never let them down. May we uphold the values of freedom and of the inherent dignity of every human being by our own right conduct and by the kindness and tolerance we show to one another. May we be, in the words of Isaiah, a light to the nation. There will be then will the labors and sacrifices of those veterans be honored, and in words alone, but by deeds. And now let us say, Amen.
Please join me. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountains, majesties above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Thank you.